All right. Well, welcome back to our evening tonight. And we're in lesson number 8 of the Esalen series. And tonight is a special lesson, one that is quite deceiving, one that looks like, wow, I'm not seeing a lot of whole movement on the screen. Like, for instance, there's not going to be a lot of spotlighting because there's not a lot of movement that's visual that's going to be evident. However, it doesn't mean that there's not a lot going on, as you probably know, and that the potential for change is huge, absolutely huge. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of tie something in for you. So if you're following along in the series, like I said, this is number 8. But number 6 and 7 are so closely related to the grouping of these 3 lessons. If you remember, lesson 6 was taking a look at the pubo, which is meaning the pelvis, and the eye and pelvis connection. And we were doing something about rocking the pelvis in a horizontal line, and a vertical line. And this is when we had the knees open to the side and we were looking past and bringing our head in a certain direction. But last week was a very powerful lesson as well, because then it started to free up. Number 7 freed up our midline in such a way so that we began to move from the pelvis and sense this vertical cardinal line that was able to be a sense of freedom that could actually move from side to side and stack up over the foot. Okay. And then we ended with that lesson starting to see some people as they really found that cardinal line, that ability of the pelvis to carry the midline, we started to see the head kind of tilt in the opposite direction of which the midline was happening. Okay. Now, if you look at this diagram that I've designed up here, it's a fancy one, isn't it? Really fancy. So you can imagine that at first glance, because you know I'm into that whole center of gravity, base of support thing, right? You might think that this is like the center of your mass, right? And this is the center of mass and where we can carry our center of mass, you know, forward, out to the side, back and out to the side. But it's actually not. It's related to the pelvis, but it's not a picture of the pelvis. It's a picture of this. This would be, let me change that. This is the nose. So if that's the nose, can you start to get a sense that this is the eye? You're looking at the eye straight ahead. And this would be an example of looking at the right eye. And this person just happens to have a green eye, okay? And you see these like little pink things all around these different stations. And from that different stations, you could see the possibility of where these arrows are drawn, of where the eyeball could go. So tonight's lesson is taking a look at these 6 muscles that surround each of your eye, 6 on one, 6 on the left, working together for the most part in tandem, okay? And these are tendons that actually connect to the eyeball. And the tendons are connected to muscle, which then has another tendon on its end, and it's connected to the skull bone, the orbits of the eye. So when you have tension in your eyeball, you will have a tendency to be holding your center mass in a very particular place. And one of the hallmarks, and one I think the genius of the Feldenkrais method, is that he was able to help free our eyes, not just as instruments of vision in order to see maybe a little more clearly, but to free the eyeball within its own socket so that the relationship neurologically to the eye, to the neck can connect and give us a horizon line and interaction within our community. But it also gives the eyes and the inner ear, something within the inner ear, the vestibular system, a connection. So again, giving us this sense of a brightness. But it also, these eyes give us the ability to really change the tone. The tone is this muscular contraction that helps hold you up. It's the reason why, I get this tension on one side, I can never get rid of it. I stretch and stretch and stretch and never goes, never goes. All right. So if you're having something to that level, we're going to see what kind of role that these tendons have. All right. What can we do with these tendons that could actually free up and give us a different experience against gravity? All right. And in our movement. So the night's lesson, of course, is about the eyes.
You happy dogs, you ain't lost your food, Cameron.
Thank you for muting. Appreciate that. So the night's lesson is restoring vision beyond seeing. Restoring vision beyond seeing. All right. So it's not just changing the focal point of this lens and getting a good image. That's wonderful. That's going to be helpful. But we're seeing that the possibility that our vision is more than just for seeing. It's for the connection to the other subsystems in our nervous system. It's the connection of these subsystems that make everything happen for us. More pleasurable, hopefully. Okay. And maybe heal some really old chronic tension that you haven't been able to get rid of. And maybe just facilitate, maybe it could facilitate or turn on a group of muscle that has been inhibited because somewhere else in the body has been way too tight for too long. All right. Now, this lesson you are going to start seated in a chair. And if you have glasses on, it's kind of very interesting. In Feldenkrais, we always say to take the glasses off, right? To have a different experience. Tonight, I'm wearing glasses. I'm giving my contacts a break. So I'm going to let you choose if you want to keep them on or off. Most of the time, we're going to keep our eyelids closed, which are different than your eyeballs or your eyes. So eyelids, most of the time, will be closed. However, for some of us, the immediate pressure of placing glasses on the nose wakes up the nervous system in a very different way. So you might want to play with, if you've always taken your glasses off, you might want to keep your glasses on just to see if the biofeedback or the signal of putting the glasses in contact with the nose brings you back to a different orientation. Now, it matters not if you have bifocals or trifocals, because, we're not going to be seeing or reading. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. All right. So you're sitting in your chair. Sit back and begin to feel the support of the chair back. Your bottom on the chair and your feet on the floor. And you can rest your hands in your lap, hands, palms up, palms down, it's whatever is good for you. And most of the time when we take this position, it's an automatic that we begin to close our eyes. But of course, I'm going to ask you to open them. And I want you to start to look around your room. Just start to glance and notice where your head, where did you go? Which direction? Did you go left or right when you started to glance around your room? We just notice that. And I want you to start to see things in your room. And as you turn your head and you look and see things, I want you to start to name them. Ah, like, there's there's that TV in front of me. Oh, there's that flower out to the side of me. Just those things. Give them a name, the object. And you do that as you move around the room, going slow. When you start to name your object, right, it begins to help you identify their location in space. So think about that. Pillow, paper, chair, rug. It starts to orientate you. Now land your eyes on that object. Notice the space between that object and you. There's space in between that. You can see that space, can't you? Mhm. Now, find the midpoint of that space. You have it? Now, from the midpoint, look quickly back to the object and then back to the midpoint, back to the object, back to the midpoint, back to the object. Now, see beyond the object. See the object and the next thing, the last thing, maybe there's a wall there, right? So that now the wall, there's a connection of the end of the wall to you. And now there's a new space, right? There's a new distance in that space. Can you find the midpoint between the wall and you in that space? Mhm. And then now, without moving your head, release your, actually look around, do move your head. Find a new space. Find a new object. Can you see that there is the possibility of space and object both? You can flick your awareness of your eyes from sensing space to object. Now, settle your eyes on another object. Now, let your eyes move to the right of the object. I mean, obviously, the object's still going to stay within your field of vision, but it's like you see to the right of that and then come back to the center. Try that again. Notice that when you flick the eyes to the right of that object, can you still attend to your breath? And then you come back. How about going to the left? Left of the object and then back to the left again and back. Now let that object go and bring your eyes forward in the direction of the camera, if that's what it is, or in the direction of wherever you're facing. Mhm. Sometimes we are not used to moving our eyes to the extremes, the eyeball's capability, the eyeball's potential of moving. We're not used to being able to reach that because we stay in a very confined way of movement with the eyes. It's a preservation, it's safety. So tonight, and you may have even experienced it right now, when you started to go off to the right, and especially if you went to the extreme end of the right or the left, the image might feel a little funky, wonky. You might start to feel dizzy. You might even start to feel nauseous. Okay. I want you to know that that is a very common thing that happens because the eyes, they're so highly tuned to either sense motion and to pay attention and try to grasp and bring in a focal point of that image. So when it's fuzzy out there, the systems, the subsystems can't really read what's going on. What is that very clear? So I don't want you to get concerned that if you get dizzy or you get nauseous, you just shorten the range of the motion. Or another strategy for yourself is that I'll direct you into a certain direction, but you'll be able to go into the direction that has more ease, more availability. And once you go into that direction several times, then all of a sudden, when you go into the direction that was giving you the dizziness or the nausea, it starts to dissipate. Okay. So now you're facing ahead. There's also a ceiling above you, right? So facing head, this is the middle, if I could call it that. So now can you begin to look up and see the ceiling? So you can move your head, right? And then you can come back to the middle. And of course, the eyes follow the head and it comes to the middle. And you can look down in the direction of the floor, and the head would nod, the chin comes towards the breastbone, and then you come back middle. And again, head and eyes moving down, coming back to the middle. Now, if we keep the head still, let's just let the eyeball move up in the direction of the ceiling. Your eyebrows will lift. Mhm. And then you come back to midline. Good. And then now the eyeballs turning down towards the direction of the ceiling. Excuse me, the floor. And then back to midline. So we're keeping the head still, but we're allowing the eyeball to turn down and then come back to midline. Mhm. And now close your eyes. You close the eyelids. Feel how you can keep the eyelids closed. And now return to letting the eyeball look upward. It's so often that, and then you can come back to the middle. Sometimes when you repeat that several times, sometimes letting the eyeballs move upward like that, we have a tendency the eyelids will start to come open. It's kind of hard to keep them. Or you might even start to feel that the chin starts to rise. Not necessary, but it can move to its capacity before the head starts to move. And then once or twice, bring the eyes, once they're at the midline, let's go down to the floor with the eyelids closed. Mhm. And back to level, your middle. Good. Now open your eyes and begin to transition yourself to lying on the floor. We're going to start to lie on the back. And you can have your legs in any position you like. You can have one knee bent, one leg long. You can rest both calves up on the back of a chair or a couch. You can let your legs be long. And even throughout this lesson, you can let your legs change. Mhm. We want to, at first, really keep the head more level with the rest of the body. So if you lie on your back and you have that tendency to tilt the chin up towards the ceiling, that might be an indicator for you. You need a little bit more support. Mhm. That looks good. I may go ahead and highlight a few of us. We'll just see what I can see. There we go. And let your eyelids close. Mhm. Just notice where the eyeballs start to rest in their sockets. And this place where you're at, this will be our middle for right now, your middle. And I want you to begin to let the eyeballs start to look toward the right, as though that if there was a wall on that side, on your right side, that you would be casting the eyes in that direction. And then you come back to the middle. Good. And then there's the middle. And then you can also bring your eyes to look to the left, eyeballs, and then they come back to the middle. And you're going to do that a couple of times, noticing always stopping in the middle, then moving the other direction, stop, and then reverse the direction, coming back to the middle. Sometimes as we stop at the ends of the range, it kind of helps with that integration so it doesn't feel so dizzy or so challenging. Now, anytime through this lesson, you can just rest your eyes. You can just rest your ears and no longer hear what I have to say. In fact, I dare say, I believe some of you will fall into a deep rest, into a deep sleep, and that's okay too. And start to reduce that speed by half so that you're really starting to slow down the eyes moving to the left, to the middle, to the right. And connect in your mind, connect with the sensation that you are in control of moving your eyeballs. I know that sounds rather weird, but we can become very mechanistic or making these mechanical movements. That's fine, but it won't change what you're looking for. It's the feeling of the ball moving in the socket. It's the feeling of finding that midpoint of who you are, moving away from it, and then always returning. Good. Now, rest. As you lie there, you can absolutely become aware of the breath, breathing in, pausing, leaving, pausing, and coming in again. You're breathing, you are being breathed, as well as you have control over your breath, very much like the eyes. The eyes are going to always move, and you can have influence over that like you have influence over your breath. You can attend to the 5 cardinal lines, the arms, the leg lines, your vertical cardinal line, and how your head sits on that vertical cardinal line, how your eyes sit within that vertical cardinal line. Now let's see if I can bring a little more clarity to the midpoint of the movement or the arcing of the eyes. So with the breath in the background, very slowly begin to take the eyes to the right and then back to the middle. Slowly moving the eyeballs to the right and back to the middle. Now, allowing yourself to move just a little further. Where's the end range? Is it the corner of your eye that you think that's the end before you head back to the middle? Or is the end of the movement where the eye starts to look for the wall? So, one sense that the eye is the end of the range, the end of right, wherever that is, can be like right next to your skull, or it could be actually further away, couldn't it? Each coming back to the midline. Letting the eyelids be closed for a reason. We close the eyelids because the moment you open up, the brain is so tuned to pay attention to the visual cues in the room. That's why we don't want to distract and as we start to change those receptors on the eyes and give them something to look at. Good. Now, let that go. Coming back again to your eyeballs. In one sense, you're postured toward the ceiling, aren't you? Those eyeballs are postured towards the ceiling. And as we start to take the eyeballs from the midpoint of the ceiling to the left, letting the eyes trace across the ceiling, something that's very far away from you. And then going to the end of that range, which is pleasurable for you, and then pause, then reverse, coming back toward the starting point. So here's actually a third reference as you begin to explore midline to the left and then coming back. You can have the intention or imagine that you're tracing the arc along the ceiling that goes to the wall to your left. You can have the intention that as your eyes are actually not having the sense of the ceiling, but as they move to the left, you feel the corner of your eye, right? The corner of your eye socket, which is a little different than arcing it through the ceiling, isn't it? And then, of course, just letting the eyeballs flit over to the wall that's over to the left, right? Good. Now, let that go. Taking a moment for some neural integration. A fancy term for the word pause, isn't it? But it lets you know what's happening underneath. So this may be a time where you begin to sense your body and maybe a change. Maybe it's a change in your legs. Maybe it's a change in your arms or your head. Something is starting to feel a little more support. Something may feel a little bit more lifted. Breathing in, breathing out. Starting in the middle again, letting the eyes move a little bit to the right, not at its end range. And then coming back to the middle and a little to the left, but not to its end range. And coming back to the middle. So that there's this a little arc going to the right, then coming back, going to the left. And each time you are able to track, yep, That's my middle. And then moving back and forth, right, left, breathing, making it easy, smooth. And you might notice that the head, as you start to increase the end ranges of the arc, you might start to notice how the head actually starts to want to move, or maybe somewhere in the neck. Not that we're going to roll the head or the neck, but it's underneath. As you get closer and closer to the ends of the arc, it's a natural phenomenon to want to experience movement in the head. Now, some of you may already start to notice that your eyes are a little jumpy. You go smooth, 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 and then all of a sudden you're over to the left. And what happened to that space between the left and the middle? It just went really fast. Good. For some of you, I know I never notice my eyes being jumpy. Is that something that's new for you? Up to now, when we do these small investigations, we don't really know what's happening until we start to gather our awareness and be able to attend, be the observer. Good. Now you're starting to get that signal that it's time to stop that movement of the eyes, right? And when you get that signal, could you go ahead and just roll over onto your side? And if you have a small pillow or anything there, that way I know that you've actually stopped the movement and you're just lying on your side resting, head supported. And that lets me know that we're all on the same page. Mhm. This jumpiness that we experience sometimes where the eyes feel like they're skipping. This is the nervous system is actually being able to communicate with us. It's using this language of movement where movement can't go. It could start to signal that the movement within the vertical line, within the arm or leg line, the center of mass, it can mean that the areas that are needed to move in that direction aren't quite available. So the jumpiness is worthy of just noticing. From this sideline position, let your eyes lids stay closed. And I want you to begin to protrude the tongue forward, just out between the teeth and the lips a little bit. Just stick it out. And I want you to stick it out a little bit. It's not that, maybe an inch or so, no more than an inch and a half, and then retract it back in. So the tongue is round as it comes out, not necessarily really flat, but round, poking out between the lips. And you can feel the lips kind of move around the tongue as though that the lips kind of kiss the tongue in a way. So it's rounding, so we're not flattening out our mouth. And then you retract it back. The lips slightly closing around the tongue. That's right. That's the midline of the lips. Yeah, the midline of the lips. Good. Bring it back in. Now, what I want you to do is this next time we're going to protrude the tongue, what I want you to do is I want you to let the tongue protrude and let it glide along the lips to the right corner of the mouth, kind of finding the end of the mouth where it ends into the face. And then you return the tongue right back to the middle. Now, it's important, we're going to do that several times, protruding the tongue, keeping the tongue out for a little while here, about an inch. It's not very far. And then sweeping the tongue across the lips to the corner of the right mouth, the right side, and then come back. Now, for some of you, sweeping the tongue across the lips, you have this tendency you want to separate the lips away from the tongue. Can you let the sensation of the top of the tongue feel the top lip? Let the sensation of the bottom of the tongue feel the bottom lip. It's not just the mechanics of sweeping your tongue over there. Yes, that's right. That's better. That's better. And so, with that sensation of feeling the tongue within the lips, you can start to spread your awareness to how it's impact on the chin, isn't it? As you sweeping the tongue to the right corner of the mouth and then coming back to the midline, that it changes the chin, it moves the chin. Good. The next time you come in the middle, retract the tongue back into the mouth and let it rest. Sometimes if your mouth is really dry, it feels like the tongue just and lips just kind of stutter over. Mhm. So take a moment to try to garner a little bit more saliva. For some, you may even feel a little more drool. That's okay too. So once again, begin to protrude the tongue out and allow the tongue now to sweep to the left. So moving from the midpoint, the midline, to the left corner of the mouth and returning back. Feeling how, as the tongue sweeps across the lips, taking note of that, how is that different here compared to the right? For some, it may be easier. For sure, you might be able to get a sense that, oh my goodness, my chin is not moving. It's like my whole jaw is moving. Huh. And I bet some of you might be noticing if you were to sense what your eyeballs are doing in relationship to the tongue. Do they stay in the middle all the time, or do you find that your eyes are following the tongue? Hmm, good. Two more. Is your tongue jumpy? Is it smooth? Now, the next time you come to the midline, retract the tongue in and just rest. Sometimes when we start to do these movements laying on our side, we now have a different base of support. And this base of support is more like, oh, laying on a nice wide balance beam. It's very different than laying flat on your back when you take up more surface area of your torso and your legs. So we're going to now connect this tongue moving to the right with the eyeball moving to the right. So begin to protrude the tongue out, and you start in the middle. For some of you, you may find that after doing this movement, that you fall into a very restful place. Just allow yourself to rest. You'll always catch it on the replay. You will miss nothing. And then now sweeping the tongue to the right, allow the eye to sweep also to the right. And as the tongue comes back to the middle, so too do the eyes. And then 3, maybe 4 times. That's all you need. Just again, both moving to the right. And can you pace the eye movement with the tongue so that it's slow enough that you don't lose track of either arc of motion? They're moving together in tandem as a team. Each time coming back to the midline, there's something about that maintaining that protruding tongue that allows you that sense of middle. Mhm. Good. The next time you're at that middle, withdraw your tongue and relax. Relax your eyes. Feel the movement of the breath. That for some, that sudden little inhale that comes, that sudden more support of your body against the ground. And again, protruding your tongue out through the midline. Let's find out what it's like when we take the tongue to the left and the eyes to the left as well. Finding the in ranges, either the corner of the eye or even protruding the tongue to the corner of the left side of the mouth, and then returning back to midline. The very clear movement of what is the end, what is the arc, where does it begin? The breath in the background uninterrupted. Good. The next time it comes to the midline, let it go. Now, come to lie on your back with your legs in any position you like, resting your head on the floor supported, or just stay on your side if you'd like. It's fine too. We're going to do it for lying on the back. Letting your eyelids close, your eyeballs resting in their sockets. And let's see if this tongue business had any impact on the quality of the eyeball tracking through its orbit, through its skull. So you begin with your eyes in the middle and begin to let your eyes move to the right, finding its comfort, reversing, moving through the midline and over to the left, finding its end range of comfort, and then moving back. Did that change for you in quality of maybe range of motion, jumpiness of motion? Are you able to do that a little bit with some ease that doesn't set off any dizziness, that doesn't change your breath in any way? Now let that go. We're going to do a different movement now, but the eyelids still stay closed. I want you to select an imaginary point on the ceiling in front of you, and that there is a beautiful white feather. And I want you to begin to allow the feather to slowly start to lower itself gradually, coming down, and eventually it will land between your eyebrows. And see if you can track in your mind that feather. And then once it lands on the forehead, it very easily and gently can begin to rise up again. And you'll follow it as it rises up and starts again, gently falling from the ceiling. There's no acceleration, it's not moving fast. And you want to see, when is it that it becomes clear? Is there a time when there's two feathers, or is it just one? And once again, as it starts to land on the forehead, it's going to raise up slowly. And so there's that space that it travels from your forehead to the ceiling. And there's a midpoint. Can you allow the feather to hover at that midpoint, that space that exists between the ceiling and your forehead? Allowing you to really focus there as the feather becomes very sharp, very clean, very clear. You can feel, you can see those individual little hairs. And then drop that feather down, the midpoint between where you were at and the forehead, to a new midpoint. Let your eyes take the time to focus that there. So now the color of your eye, the lens, this is focusing and changing, allowing you to see the image a little clearer. And then now, once again, let the feather ascend towards the ceiling, passing through its midpoint, going all the way to the ceiling, and dissolving into the ceiling. Now let's come back and do the eye movement from right to left again and see if that's changed for you. Which parts of yourself, your segments, your body parts, do they change or feel different with you as you make that movement? Good. Let that go. Taking a few seconds for another neural integration. The eye is so powerful in registering how we will stand, how we sit, how we reach, how we move. The smoothness of the eye movement, the freedom of the muscles of the eye to adjust, respond is so, so powerful. And the jumpiness of the eye or the non-smoothness of the movement really plays a big role in our function. Now, in just a moment, you're going to come to lie on your side and to sitting and then to stand. But I'd like you to do so very in this way. So don't move yet. Don't move yet. Because I'm going to ask you to keep your eyelids closed as you make this movement. So you're going to have to go slow. So as you make this movement of coming onto your back, to your side, to sitting, to stand, start to track your eyeballs. See how the eyeballs move as you move. It's a lovely experiment. And if you don't feel safe keeping your eyes closed, well, of course, you can open them, but go slow. Feel out what it's like to be on the side. So if you're on the floor, you know that you'll be safe. But if you're on a table and you start to roll, well, you've rolled so many times on that table. You can do it with your eyes closed. And you can sit up from that table and from that floor with your eyes closed. And sit there for a moment with your eyes closed. And then when you're ready, with your eyelids closed, begin to bring yourself to standing. Now you can feel the chair behind you or you feel the table behind you. Just see what it's like to depend upon your eyes are still working for you. These muscles in the eyes really help orientate you in space, not just because they're connected to your inner ears, not just because they're connected to the spine. Yes, it's because they're connected indirectly to the feet, to your center of mass. That's right. Just stand there for a moment, going slow, and very gradually, I want you to begin to let your eyes open very gradually, sensing if there is any difference for you. Your eyes looking forward, looking around, letting your eyes pause in the midline, the middle. And without moving your head, I want you to get a sense of the horizontal line between the right foot and the left foot. And glancing your eyeballs down, you won't see the line, of course, but just glance down in the direction as though that you would have the intention to see that midpoint. And then bring your eyes up to the horizon. And glance your eyeballs down to the midpoint between the knees and then back up to the horizon. There's a natural sway that's happening here. That's normal. Their eyeballs down to the belly button and back up. Eyeballs focusing in the mid part of your breastbone and back up. The eyeballs focusing on the mid part of your forehead and then back. And the eyeballs focusing to the vertex, to the top of your head and back to that midline. And imagining that your eyes could focus to that point behind your skull and then come back to the front. And the eyeballs looking up between your shoulder blades and then come back forward. You know where I'm going with this. The eyes up and as though they could see that gluteal cleft, that buttock crack, and then back up. And our last one, bringing the eyes up over the head and down to that space between your feet, that horizontal line, seeing it, experiencing it from the eyeballs moving back to see it. It's different, I know. Of course, you're not going to turn your eyeballs and then bring them back. Good. Good. Now allow yourself to walk along your room, then the space of your room, and just notice what it's like to move. Mhm. What your center of mass or your gluteal cleft is like, the freedom of your center vertical line. What's the clarity of your sight within this room? Mhm. That's it. Now bring yourself back to your original chair, sitting there. And that's it. And looking around the room, where do you choose to look first? You can even see not just right or left, but a little bit more up, right? Isn't that interesting? The eyeballs. That's right. Nice. Good. All right. There you go. And then now looking ahead and toward the direction of the camera, you see me. I see you. And there is space between us, right? You know that. I'm in Indiana, and some of you are very far away. And yet, there's a midpoint that exists between you and I. Can you sense that as you look into the camera? Yeah. So that when we have a conversation and when we can be in relationship to ourself and to other, there's a midpoint that lets us know that where we meet, where we intersect, where we can connect, and where we can have the best conversation from. Not only between person to person, but within inside us, we have these midpoints. And freeing these midpoints allows a certain level of not just motion to take place, but it frees up the nervous system to experience the availability of motor patterns, to be able to connect, contract certain muscles and release certain other muscles so that there can be a communication, a conversation that looks like function. Okay, good deal. All right. Well, that ends tonight's lesson. So we're going to stay on the line for just a little bit. So you're welcome to scoot off if you're so inclined, or to come back and wake up if you're so inclined, or just allow yourself to rest wherever you're at. That's okay too. And if there are any comments or shares that you would like, I'm open to that as well. As you know, this work brings about a sense of I would say, calmness, or has the potential to bring back a bit of peace within our system. Mhm. Good. And down at the bottom of the Zoom screen over here, there's the reactions. And if you click on that, it'll allow you to raise your hand and I'll be able to see that. And Miss Leslie.
So I just had a thought. I study meditation with Lauren Roche also, and he talks a lot about people tend to think you need to be small to be in a meditative state, but really it's great to be spacious. And he talks about how people look all day at their little teeny tiny computer screen or phone screen, and that it's a great kind of a counterpose to go outside and look at the sky and look far away at the horizon, just as a balance to what we do in modern times. So this kind of reminds me of that.
Absolutely. I'll never forget these two words when I was with my meditation teacher. They called it a focal spaciousness. It's to be able to be here and hear both, so that it is this sense of a verticality, but also a horizontal. And if we think about it, when we start to change, there's a lot of exercises that are done with children and in adults when we begin to change the where we look and how far we look. So it allows the eyes to either converge, eyeballs, or move apart or diverge. So it starts to give some extensibility of those tendons or some flexibility of the muscle. It's like stretching your eyeballs. When I think of going out to the trees in the sky to seeing you right here, you're really stretching your eyeballs within their sockets. So thank you for that comment. Very sweet. Steve?
Yes, I noted that it was much more difficult on my eyes when my eyelids were closed to try to look up, then down, or to the sides. I could move my eyeballs further to the side and down than I could up.
Mm-hmm.
That of any significance?
Quite a bit of significance. And do you wear, are these called bifocals here?
What I wear, yes, they are.
Yeah. So a lot of times when, especially we have trained our eyes, it's a habit that they train and they find, now they have these things called invisible lines, so that you do kind of like this in order to see through and clarify the image. So we're very trained. Your nervous system is very trained to cast the eyeball down. And so you have done a fabulous job, right, of exercising the tendon that pull it either down into the right or down into the left, as opposed to the tendons that actually we don't have one that takes us straight up or straight down. There's always a bias going up into the right or up into the left. So these are kind of weak. It's kind of like someone who who exercises the front of their thigh muscles, but the back of the thigh muscle is not so good. Okay. So it's an imbalance that gets set up. And so in order for the eyes to move up, then what happens is you got to let go of this. And sometimes to let go of tension in a group of muscles, you have to go with it. So in this lesson, there's explorations of not just moving down like in towards their toes or the ceilings, but there is, I'm going to have Lindsay mute that if you can. So what can happen is that you move the eyes down into the left or down into the right. And that will start to allow, intentionally going into that direction, will start to allow then its opposite counterpart of up and to the left to be more available. It's a wonderful neurological principle of inhibition. Reciprocal inhibition is what it's called, but it's done in the eyeballs too. Yeah, yeah. You just haven't worked out up here. You bet. Okay. Yes, Freddie.
I just wanted to say that my eyes went exactly the opposite way. It was easier for them to go up when they were closed, but it was really hard for them to go down. They felt like they were hitting the end of something.
The end of the motion, the end of. So there would be another strategy for you to find the direction. Is it easier up and left or up and right? Find that direction, coming back to the middle, moving here, getting that clarity. And then it would see, what's it like to go down and right towards my nose to see if that's available. And then, of course, there's another organization of, I'm curious to what people thought of the tongue, sticking the tongue out, right? Because this lesson the original lesson does not include the tongue, but I think it was very, very important. And so I won't belabor that if you're not interested in it, but the tongue, being able to, Freddie, bring the tongue not just to the corner of the mouth, but up and left, so that you could push the lip up and left, right? It starts to change how you use your jaw. It starts to change how the head moves on C1. If the head can move clear on C1, that C1, what does it do? It allows the ball of the skull to look down. And if you can signal the ball moving, then the orbit can start to tip down. It's very, very fascinating, I think. Let me know what you think. All right, Miss Susan.
I'm glad you asked about the tongue because after we worked with our tongue, my eyes were less jerky in how they moved left and right. It bothered me quite a bit when we started the hour, how the movement felt very segmented, like my eyes couldn't smoothly look one way or the other when they were closed, especially. And that tongue, after moving only the tongue, that smoothed out so much more.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, where the tongue goes, the jaw will start to go. And we begin to have this sense of appreciation, and we talk about this in class that I teach. We begin to have this appreciation that the jaw, it's not a part of the skull. It's connected to the skull, but it's not the skull. So where you can take the tongue, you're going to be able to differentiate the jaw. And where you can differentiate the jaw, then the ball and socket up here has more freedom. And that's huge in balance and writing reactions and walking. It's huge. It's I think a missing part of healing and rehabilitation that doesn't get addressed beyond just getting that range of motion back in your knee and your hip or, shoulder. So yes, Miss Mila.
Yeah, I had the same reaction as Susan, but as a quick follow-up to what you said to Freddie, when you move the tongue to the up and to the left, do you go straight up and then move left, or do you do the diagonal?
Nice. Here's what I would suggest. You remember when I said, when you have the tongue protruding out and then moving to the side, can you feel how the top of the tongue strokes the top lip and the bottom of the tongue strokes the bottom lip? Can you feel that? You want the feeling, you want the sensation, because that's what makes the change in the nervous system. If you just make it mechanic and say, okay, eyes up and left, tongue up and left, we're not going for that. So as you begin to take the tongue across, if you feel it, I'm going to stop talking so you can see what I'm doing. You notice that there's no space. You don't see any space, but there you go. That's it. My lips are being able to, and my jaw doesn't have to drop. It's almost as though it's not almost, it's the difference between letting the jaw separate the teeth. So you see this space. See the space? As opposed to when you keep it connected, then you start to get the beautiful side tilt and rotation that goes on in the jaw that then frees the base of the head, that then can free the eyes. So then it's a reverse of not just using the eyes to free, but you use the tongue to free the base of the head, which then frees the eyes, and then it gives a different output.
Thank you. What an amazing explanation.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you again for joining me, and may you have a great evening or a great afternoon and or a great day wherever you're at. All right. Until next week. Bye-bye.